The first thing Elena, the crown jewel of South City, did upon her return to the country was plot her revenge against the ex-boyfriend who had betrayed her. During their class reunion, she feigned a casual air, swirling her drink as she asked, "I remember we had a classmate named Ryan, right? Why don't I see him here today?"
"He's dead."
"Been dead for a long time," a male student replied, amidst his flirting with a group of girls. "Must be 5 or 6 years now, hasn't it?" Another chimed in. "About a year after you went abroad, he passed away in an accident." Elena's grip tightened so violently that the crystal wine glass shattered in her hand. Shards dug deep, and blood began to seep from her palm, dripping onto the polished floor. The onlookers winced at the sight, but Elena seemed utterly oblivious to the wound. "What did you just say?" Her voice was a ghost of itself. "How can you joke about something like that?" A classmate noticed the tremor in her bloody hand and spoke up softly. "I'm not joking, Elena." Seeing the darkness clouding Elena's face, a student named Andy hurried to explain. "Ryan is truly gone. In our sophomore year, he followed some older guys to work on a construction site just to scrape together enough for tuition. The story goes that he lost his footing and fell from the scaffolding." Andy paused, swallowing hard. He landed right on a pile of scrap metal. A rebar pierced through his back, puncturing his spleen and lungs. They rushed him to the hospital, but he had no money. The hospital refused to operate, and the site foreman vanished. In the end, our department head had to go down there to handle everything. Andy watched Elena's face, terrified that a single wrong word would set her off. But happiness was miles away from her current expression. "The whole class organized a fundraiser back then," Andy continued. "To encourage us to give more, the professor even shared a photo of him lying on a gurney in the hospital hallway. It was so heart-wrenching that even a guy like me chipped in $750 immediately." Elena's face turned deathly pale. Her eyes, now bloodshot, fixed on Andy with an unblinking stare that made him freeze. "It's the truth. We wouldn't lie to you," a woman sitting next to Andy added. "I actually went with the professor to the hospital. I don't know if the surgery was delayed too long, but the doctor eventually said there was no hope left. That doctor was cold-blooded. He knew Ryan had no parents left to fight for him, so he just flatly stated he couldn't be saved. They told him to call his family to take him home, but that uncle of his, he refused to show up. In the end, it was the professor who brought him back." Elena felt a searing pain, as if her soul were being torn apart piece by piece. She could hear every word they said, but as those words merged into sentences, she found herself unable to comprehend a single one. "Oh, that's right, Elena," Andy suddenly remembered, speaking up. "You and Ryan were very close back then, weren't you? He actually mentioned you to me once." Elena's heart skipped a beat, her hand clenching tighter. What did he say?" "It was the 3rd day after he got back from the hospital. I went to visit him," Andy recalled. "He looked terrible then. Even uttering a single word seemed like an immense struggle. He asked me if you had kept in touch with anyone from class after you moved abroad." Andy watched her face, noticing her expression becoming increasingly vacant and haunted. "I told him no, that you hadn't contacted anyone since you left. He didn't say anything else after that. By that afternoon, he was gone." Andy let out a heavy sigh of regret. "I really wish I had stayed a little longer. At least then, he wouldn't have been all alone when he left this world." Elena couldn't hear them anymore. She bolted upright, pushing through the crowd and lunging for the door. Once outside the hotel, she wandered the streets aimlessly, her mind a shattered mosaic of grief. Eventually, she slumped down on the curb, surrounded by the golden, withered leaves of early autumn. The weather wasn't particularly cold, yet she pulled her coat tight around her, trembling as a chill seeped into her very marrow. When she finally stumbled back home, she found her best friend, Sarah, sitting in the living room. Sarah looked up, immediately struck by the devastation written across Elena's face. "What happened? You dressed up so beautifully for that reunion. Did you finally find the one you've been pining for?" Sarah asked, but received no answer. She pressed further. "Seriously, what's wrong? Is he married? Did he become a monk?" Elena shed her coat and walked silently toward the back of the house. A moment later, 2 hollow words drifted out from the shadows. "He's dead." The following morning, Elena drove for 7 hours straight to reach his hometown. Despite a sleepless night, she felt no fatigue. After asking the locals for directions, she found the cemetery, a desolate, wind-swept hillside. From a distance, she spotted it. a small, solitary mound of earth. There was no headstone, no marker, just a tiny grave swallowed by overgrown weeds. Elena's heart fractured in a way it never had before. The boy she had once loved with every fiber of her being was lying here in silence, forgotten by the world on this lonely hill. He didn't even have a photograph. The bouquet of fresh flowers she placed amidst the tangled weeds looked heartbreakingly out of place. As the mountain wind swept past, her eyes instantly turned bloodshot. Her lips trembled, parting several times, but not a single sound could escape her throat. As dusk settled, the mountain air grew biting. Elena sat there for the entire afternoon, a silent sentinel of grief. Next time I'll come back to see you," she finally whispered. Upon returning to South City, she found herself driving aimlessly, her mind a void. When the car finally came to a halt, she looked up and realized she was at the entrance of the narrow alleyway from their past. Elena stepped out and walked alone into the cramped passage. Years had passed. Most of the former residents had moved away, leaving the old buildings to crumble into ruin. She walked from one end to the other without seeing a soul until she stopped in front of Ryan's old door. There, she came face to face with his uncle. "So, it's you," the man muttered. He looked at Elena with disbelief, his eyes flashing with a familiar, aggressive greed. Elena wanted nothing to do with him. She turned to leave, but after only a few steps, a mocking, sarcastic voice trailed after her. "Dumped my nephew, and lived quite the glamorous life, didn't you? You look like a lady on the outside, but you're just another piece of trash. Only that idiot Ryan was stupid enough to wait for you at home every single day." Elena froze, her feet rooted to the spot. "What did you say?" She was certain she hadn't misheard. The man had just said Ryan waited for her. "I said you're heartless. That stupid brat was so terrified I'd go to you for money that he refused to admit the two of you were even dating. He claimed you had nothing to do with him, told me stay away and not cause you any trouble." The man let out a jagged laugh. "Did he think I was blind? He was just scared I'd make a scene, so he hid everything. He even threatened me, told me to keep my mouth shut. And for what? You kicked him to the curb anyway." He continued, his voice dripping with venom. "You left without a backward glance. Even when he was dying, you didn't bother to ask about him once." The man's words were like needles driven directly into Elena's heart. She suddenly remembered that night years ago, the night Ryan had repeatedly insisted there was nothing between them. She remembered how much it had hurt her then. But now, knowing the truth, that pain was magnified 1,000 times over. "Tell me everything." "Clearly," Elena demanded, stepping forward and grabbing the man by his collar. "I don't mean anything by it," the uncle spat, roughly shoving her hand away. "Back then, I just wanted to use your relationship to squeeze a little cash out of you. But he insisted there was nothing going on. He told me that after graduation, he'd never contact you again. He even threatened to stab me in my sleep if I dare to go near you for money. I knew for a fact you two were lovers. But then you went abroad and abandoned him. Even when he was dying, you didn't bother to ask a single question." The man's voice rasped with a cruel edge. "At first, I thought you only cared about money, not feelings. Who would have thought a rich woman like you could be even more heartless than I imagined?" The truth finally crashed down on Elena. Her body surrendered its strength, and she nearly collapsed onto the cold, hard ground. She realized that what she had once framed as a clean break for the sake of both their futures was, in reality, nothing more than her own cowardly escape from love. She stepped into the dilapidated house and saw Ryan's belongings shoved into a large, weathered cardboard box. Sinking to the floor, she opened it and was immediately met by an old, yellowed notebook. November 15th, 2012. She has a safe and warm home. I hope she stays there. November 20th, 2012. She waits for me at that street corner every single day. It was so cold this morning. She wore that red coat. She looked so beautiful I couldn't tear my eyes away. November 4th, 2013. My uncle is a nightmare. He's trying everything to find a way to extort money from her. I won't let him succeed. Elena is my limit. No one is allowed to disturb her. Today, I told my uncle that she and I have absolutely no relationship. I told him we won't stay in touch after high school graduation. It seems he believed me and gave up on the idea of harassing her. I want to graduate so badly, to leave this place forever. I hate everything here. I just want to be with Elena. I want us to move to another city and start a new life together. As she read these words, Elena's heart fractured. She remembered that day vividly, standing in this very alley, listening to him repeat over and over that there was nothing between them. Each of those sentences had been a blade across her heart back then. With trembling fingers, she forced herself to keep turning the pages. December 11th, 2013. Elena has gone abroad to study. She said she'll be gone for a long time. I can't bear the thought of being away from her, but I didn't show it. I can't be that selfish. I won't let my own feelings stand in the way of her having a better life. December 15th, 2013. Elena is gone. She's getting busier now. I've sent so many messages, but she hasn't had the time to reply. Maybe I should wait until she's settled in before we talk properly. Perhaps I shouldn't text her every day. I shouldn't bother her anymore. Elena's hand froze midair. Messages. She suddenly remembered the old phone, the one she had tossed into the dark corner of her wardrobe on the eve of her departure, intending to bury her past. She bolted upright, snapping the diary shut. It was only then that she realized her cheeks were drenched in tears that had fallen without her even noticing. She gathered every fragment of Ryan's life, the box, the diary, the memories, and left. The man standing at the door didn't dare block her path this time. The aura of grief surrounding her was too suffocating. For the first time in her life, Elena felt a desperate, frantic need to be home. Back in her room, she plugged in the old phone. The screen flickered to life after a minute of charging, and immediately, a relentless barrage of notification pings filled the quiet room. Each chime was a sharp needle piercing her heart. With trembling fingers, she opened the earliest messages. Have you reached America yet? Message me when you've settled in, okay? Are you still busy? Just do what you need to do first. You can reply whenever you have time, no rush. It must be cold in America right now. Is the coursework difficult? Please take care of yourself. I called, but you didn't pick up. Don't overwork yourself. You need to rest too. Your birthday is coming up. I'm knitting a scarf for you. I hope you like it. I'll give it to you when you come home. You've been gone for a year now. That's good. One less year of being apart from you. I went to work today and got a little hurt. It stings a bit, but don't worry about me. The lines of text stretched on, page after page, word after word, overflowing with a love that had never wavered. Every check-in, every question, every moment of longing was preserved in the digital glow. Eventually, Elena's heart reached its breaking point. She began to sob, a raw, agonizing sound of pure devastation. I just want to talk to you. Are you there? I really want to hear your voice. Are you still busy? Can you just reply? Just one word, please, I'm begging you. The final message was dated July 15th, 2014. Sent at 4 p.m. It was brief, a mere whisper of a sentence. I don't think I can wait for you to come back anymore. After that, there was nothing. Silence. Elena's world fractured. She gasped for air, her lungs burning as if she were drowning in a sea of infinite sorrow. Deep inside the weathered cardboard box, she found the scarf. It was thick and soft, knitted in the pale yellow hue she loved most. The style had gone out of fashion years ago, but to her, it was priceless. For the first time in years, Elena cried like a child who had lost their entire world. Across 118 days and 11,284 messages, every single line had been a testament to his devotion. He had spent his final days reaching out into a void, loving her until the very second his heart stopped beating. The hopelessness of never knowing her fate, paired with the unwavering patience of a man waiting for a reunion that would never come, it was all there. Within those 11,000 messages, there wasn't a single word of reproach. He never asked why she was silent. He never suspected she had betrayed him. He simply believed, with every fiber of his being, that she would return. That steadfastness was now a blade carving into her soul. Elena struck herself across the face, a sharp, stinging blow. She felt cruel, monstrous, and utterly irredeemable. By the following spring, as the air grew mild, wild flowers bloomed around his lonely mound. Elena had summoned several feng shui masters to discuss moving his remains to South City. In this desolate, remote place, she feared he would be cold, lonely, and frightened. Madam, the feng shui of this spot is actually quite auspicious, one master said softly. There is no need to disturb him. He passed away so young. Let his soul rest in peace. Perhaps he has already been reborn into his next life. Elena remained silent for a long time. She knew the master's words were merely a hollow comfort. As evening shadows stretched across the land, Elena reluctantly descended the mountain. In 2013, they had loved each other with a depth that defied words. Now, it was 2020. As she drove through the city, she remembered the first time their eyes had met in a sea of strangers. The moment he smiled at her, just a slight, gentle curve of the lips, her entire world had seemed to ignite with light. The traffic light was about to turn green. Elena was lost in the haze of memory, drifting through the past, until she saw a massive truck hurtling directly toward her. The impact was violent. Her head slammed against the steering wheel. Her breath grew shallow, and her consciousness began to dissolve into a cold, dark void. Just before the world vanished entirely, she saw a final image, Ryan standing at the airport gate, waving goodbye to her one last time. She realized then that it hadn't been a goodbye at all. It was an eternity. Elena bolted upright in her own bed, gasping for air. Drenched in a cold sweat, she felt the weight of a long, agonizing dream, a dream that had felt like a lifetime. As her breathing slowed, a sense of profound wrongness settled over her. She remembered the car crash vividly. She remembered the light fading. By all logic, she should be in a hospital bed, if she were alive at all. Elena scanned the room, and her heart nearly stopped. This was her bedroom, yes, but the decor and the layout were exactly as they had been when she was a girl. Even her Barbie doll was still sitting atop the bedside table, exactly where she had left it years ago. Moments later, Elena discovered something even more staggering. She rushed to the mirror and gasped. The reflection staring back at her was innocent and youthful, her skin free of the weariness of adulthood. This is me, as a child. Her mind spun in a dizzying fog. Was this a dream within a dream? Had she merely retreated into a childhood fantasy as her life ebbed away in that car wreck? To verify the reality of it all, Elena raised her hand and delivered a sharp slap to her own cheek. Ow! That actually hurts. She pinched her cheeks, feeling the soft, supple elasticity of youth. Then, she pressed her palm against her chest, feeling the frantic, rhythmic thrumming of a living heart. It was all too vivid, too visceral to be an illusion. Finally, the realization took hold. She had been reborn. A surge of overwhelming ecstasy crashed through her. If she had traveled back in time, it meant he was still alive. Wait, if she was back in her childhood, that meant he was just a boy right now. In this life, she could be by his side from the very beginning. She could watch him grow, and they could grow up together. This time, she would claim him first. The sweet gears of a new fate began to turn in Elena's head. She started imagining their future, sharing meals, walking to school, the classic childhood sweethearts, romance she had only ever read about. She giggled to herself, a smile of pure satisfaction blooming on her face. Even though she hadn't found him yet, her mind was already painting scenes of a blissful marriage. She rushed downstairs, calling out for the butler. Uncle Mark, come here for a moment. What is it, young miss? I need to go to the countryside immediately. Tell the driver to prepare the car. She couldn't wait another second. She needed to see him. Now. But miss, that's quite a distance from South City. Is there something important? I'm going to find someone. A friend. Elena shook her head instantly, a spark of determination in her eyes. Not a friend. My future husband. The road was just as she remembered it in her memories. As the car wound its way into the mountains, Elena was filled with a profound sense of awe. In her previous life, she had traveled these thousands of miles only to stand before a nameless mound of earth. This time, she was on her way to a reunion where both of them were still breathing. As they neared his home, Elena told the butler and the driver to wait in the car. She wanted to do this alone. The wooden house looked much sturdier and newer than the ruin she had seen in her past life. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Giving it a gentle nudge, the door swung open. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the small space until they landed on a blue satchel hanging on the wall. The blue satchel was frayed and worn in several places, its fabric thinning from years of use. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. There was no doubt this belonged to him. Just as she reached out to touch the weathered bag, a small, high-pitched voice rang out behind her. Who are you? Elena spun around. In an instant, she was face to face with the boy she had spent years yearning for in her dreams. But here, Ryan was just a child. Although he was barely a year younger than her, he looked frail and gaunt, as if he had been starved of both nourishment and affection. He was small for his age, a full head shorter than Elena. His eyes were wide and brimming with caution, reminiscent of a panicked fawn cornered in the woods. He stared at the stranger in his house and asked again, "Who are you?" Elena stood paralyzed, a whirlwind of emotions tearing through her. How could she possibly answer? Should she tell him she was his future girlfriend? That she was the one who had once doubted him and heartlessly abandoned him? The words died in her throat, leaving only a bitter aftertaste of regret. I came here with my uncle," she stammered, inventing an excuse on the fly. "He's here on business, but he doesn't know the area well, so he sent me in to ask for directions." She couldn't tear her eyes away from him, not even for a second. But the moment of quiet was shattered when the front door was kicked open with a violent crash. Elena turned to see a man staggering inside, a half-empty bottle of liquor clutched in his hand. She recognized him instantly. It was Lee, Ryan's wretched, cold-blooded uncle. "Who the hell are you?" Lee barked, his voice thick with intoxication and malice. Elena didn't bother to answer. Instead, her body moved on instinct, stepping firmly in front of Ryan to shield him. She remembered vividly from her previous life how Ryan had told her that whenever Lee got drunk, he took his frustrations out on the boy with his fists. True to form, Lee's eyes flared with sudden rage the moment he spotted Ryan cowering behind the girl. "You little jinx! You brat!" Lee roared, his face contorting into a mask of fury. "I lost at cards today because of you, you pathetic waste of space." With a snarl, Lee lunged forward, roughly shoving Elena aside to get a clear swing at the boy. Fury and desperation surged through Elena. Seeing Lee's hand raised to strike Ryan's face, she didn't have time to think. Her eyes darted around the room and landed on a gleaming kitchen knife resting on the wooden table. She was currently trapped in the body of a 10-year-old girl. In terms of height and raw strength, she was no match for a grown man like Lee. But she had made a silent vow. She would protect Ryan at any cost. "Don't you dare touch him." Elena's voice was the clear, high-pitched tone of a child, but her delivery was unnervingly steady and cold. It possessed a gravity that caused even a drunken brute like Lee to falter for a split second. "You brat, you think you can threaten me?" Lee sneered with a sinister grin. "I'll beat him if I want to. What are you going to do about it?" The words had barely left his mouth when his hand swung upward, preparing to deliver a stinging blow. But the moment his hand hit the air, the knife in Elena's hand flashed forward. She wasn't just trying to scare him, she truly wanted to sever his hand. Ever since her previous life, Elena had been waiting for the chance to do exactly that. "You want to die?" Lee barked, pulling his hand back in a panic. His mouth remained defiant, but his courage visibly withered. He was the type of man who only bullied the weak. Looking at the tiny girl before him, her eyes bloodshot and filled with murderous intent, he felt a sudden chill race down his spine. "Little girl, you've got guts," Lee growled, glaring at Elena as if trying to preserve a shred of dignity in front of a child. But while her guard was momentarily down, he suddenly snatched a ceramic mug from the table and hurled it directly at them. The mug flew true, striking Ryan hard on the forehead. Elena felt her fury erupt like boiling oil, reaching a violent breaking point. Like a provoked leopard, she fixed her gaze on Lee as he turned and bolted toward the door. Gripping the sharp knife, she lunged and thrust the blade at him with all her might. Unfortunately, Lee dodged. He managed to slam the door shut just in time, causing the knife to bury itself deep into the wood. Lee had escaped. Elena turned in a panic to check on Ryan, but the room was empty. The boy who had been cowering behind her was gone. Despair and a crushing sadness washed over her. The reunion she had pined for had lasted only a fleeting moment. Her husband, her little boy, had vanished. Ryan had scrambled out the back door and up the hillside. When he saw Elena chasing Lee with a knife, his fear of the small girl far outweighed his fear of his wretched uncle. In his mind, she was a marcusterous predator, a wild animal. That was his first instinct. A girl with a knife was the most marcusterous threat of all. Behind the house lay a dense forest, and he plunged into it, stumbling over the roots. In his blind terror, he lost a shoe. At that exact moment, the sky turned a bruised black, heavy clouds rolling in. Then, the heavens opened, and a torrential downpour began to lash the earth. Elena's anxiety spiked. She turned and screamed at the driver and Uncle Mark, who were still dozens of yards away. "Hurry. Everyone hurry." The three of them began to race up the mountain trail. Halfway up, the rain began to fall in sheets like a waterfall. Elena led the charge, with Uncle Mark struggling to hold an umbrella over her. "Forget the umbrella. Just get into the woods and find him." Elena cried, her heart racing as she watched the two men struggle with their footing. She was terrified that Ryan would meet with disaster in the heart of the storm. What if something happens to Ryan in this forest in such heavy rain? The thought had barely crossed her mind when her foot slipped and she tumbled into a roadside ditch. Uncle Mark and the driver rushed over to pull her out. The wealthy young lady, usually so poised and proud, now looked like a drowned rat. "Don't worry about me. Go find him first," Elena urged. Although her body was that of a 10-year-old child, her mind was that of a woman in her late 20s. Finding Ryan was the only thing that mattered. The three of them searched for hours without a single sign of him. As dusk approached, Elena's eyes caught a glimpse of light blue fabric peeking out from a rocky crevice. She ran toward it and found me curled up, asleep in the hollow of the stone. Elena felt her heart soften instantly. She knelt down, gently wiping the rainwater from my face and touching my forehead. She realized I was burning up with a fever. "Miss, we must head back now," Uncle Mark urged. Seeing that I had been found, he was anxious for Elena to get out of the storm. "Let the driver carry him back." But Elena had already gathered me into her arms, lifting me from the cold ground herself. They drove to the town and located the largest, best hospital available. "He has a high fever and needs an 4-drip, the doctor informed them. "Please, doctor, give him the medicine as quickly as possible," Elena said, her eyes fixed on me, a tiny, fragile figure on the hospital bed. An indescribable feeling surged within her. She couldn't imagine how helpless and pitiable her little boy must have felt during the childhood she had never been a part of in her previous life. Elena carefully tucked the blanket around me, silently vowing that in this life, she would never leave me. She would protect me forever. She sat by the bed for hours. The 4 dripped slowly, and the doctor had to replace the bottle twice. As midnight approached, Uncle Mark came over to remind her to sleep. "Uncle Mark, you and the driver don't need to worry about me. Go back to the hotel and rest. I'll stay here tonight to look after him," Elena said, her tone surprisingly mature. "I can handle things here. I'll call you if anything happens." Uncle Mark looked at her in surprise. It was rare to hear such adult-like words from a child. "Miss, you're at the age where you need sleep to grow. You shouldn't stay up so late. Go with little Ryan to the hotel. I can stay here." Elena cut him off. "I'm not comfortable leaving him alone in the hospital. He's very shy, and it's the middle of the night. I have to stay here to watch over him. It's the only way I can be at peace." Even though Uncle Mark had long known that Elena was not like other children, born with an intellect that far outstripped her peers, this level of maturity still left him stunned. "Then I shall stay with you, young miss," Uncle Mark insisted. After all, she was the heiress of the Liu group, the only daughter of the Liu family. If anything happened to her, his own life wouldn't be worth much. "I said it's not necessary, Uncle Mark. You may go," Elena said, her voice commanding and sharp. Uncle Mark flinched. The aura Elena radiated in that moment was undeniably that of a powerful adult, not a 10-year-old girl. "Very well. I will head out. Miss, if anything happens, please contact me immediately." "Yes," Elena nodded. Once Uncle Mark left, she no longer had to restrain herself. The deep longing and affection she had suppressed for so long finally spilled over. She missed him so much. During those years in America, she had missed him every single day. Every time she had wanted to return, she was held back by the fear that her presence would disrupt the peaceful, happy life she imagined he was leading. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, she had abandoned her master's degree to rush home. She never could have imagined that a cruel and painful reality had been waiting for her. Elena reached out, her fingers gently brushing my lips, which were dry and cracked from the high fever. As the initial shock of finding her lost treasure began to settle into a quiet joy, she eventually drifted off to sleep. Elena woke up in a haze around 5 o'clock the next morning. It wasn't quite light outside. Only a faint, weak sliver of dawn touched the horizon. She had spent the night slumped against the edge of the hospital bed. In both her past and present lives, the pampered heiress of the Liu family had never endured such discomfort. But because the person she was with was Ryan, she didn't feel the slightest bit of unease. On the contrary, she was filled with an infinite sense of happiness. She composed herself, looking toward me as I lay sleeping soundly. She stood up to go wash her face, but by the time she returned, I had sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes with a groggy, half-asleep expression. "You're awake?" Elena cried out in joy, hurrying to my side. She reached out, intending to take my hand since it was resting outside the covers. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? I was startled by the girl who suddenly appeared before me. Looking closely, I recognized her. She was the girl from yesterday who had chased someone with a knife. To my young mind, she was a terrifyingly wild child. Don't touch me, I blurted out, recoiling in fear. I was terrified, shrinking into a ball and scrambling as far back on the bed as I could. Don't be afraid. I won't touch you, Elena said, quickly pulling her hand back. To me, the person standing before me was a complete stranger. I was naturally shy, and her violent actions from the day before had clearly left me traumatized. She realized there was only one way to salvage the situation. Are you hungry? Just as Elena asked, Uncle Mark walked in carrying a tray. Miss, I've brought breakfast for the both of you. Elena turned to look at the tray. Uncle Mark had somehow managed to find a restaurant in this tiny town that served decent dim sum, shrimp dumplings, soup buns, and a bottle of warm milk. Elena remembered that Ryan loved steaming hot buns and wasn't a fan of Western-style breakfasts. Uncle Mark, she said, please go out and buy some fresh hot buns and some local milk. He won't like this. Understood, I'll go right away, Uncle Mark nodded. He stole a glance at the boy on the bed. Though small and frail, the boy was undeniably handsome. He couldn't help but wonder when his young mistress had ever crossed paths with him. Even though she had never been to this town before, Uncle Mark knew that Elena, like her father, possessed a capacity for deep, intense devotion. It was clear she was treating this boy like someone more precious than a best friend. Fortunately, Uncle Mark had left behind a small bowl of congee, its sweet, comforting aroma filling the air. It was exactly what a body needed after a fever. Come, have some porridge. I'll feed you, Elena said, stepping closer. She scooped a small spoonful, blew on it gently to cool it down, and brought it toward my lips. I'm not eating, I mumbled. Even at my young age, I understood the Markesters of the world. For all I knew, this porridge was poisoned, or perhaps this was a plot to kidnap and sell me. The girl in front of me didn't look like a good person in my eyes, especially after seeing how curtly she spoke to the older man earlier. She certainly wasn't a well-behaved child. You're sick. You need the nutrition. Be good, Elena urged. I said no. I tried to be principled, determined not to eat food from an unknown source. However, I hadn't eaten since noon yesterday. My stomach was hollow and growling. Faced with a bowl of fragrant, sweet congee, how could a small child like me resist the temptation? I looked at the porridge, then at Elena as she held the spoon to my lips. My resolve crumbled. I opened my mouth and swallowed. The moment the flavors hit my tongue, my eyes lit up. I had never tasted anything so delicious in my entire life. Watching me eat with such appetite, Elena felt a sharp pang of heartache. Young miss, your mother just called. Uncle Mark interrupted. She insisted I bring you home immediately. Since this is an unfamiliar place, neither she nor your father are at ease. It was only then that Elena remembered her parents. Since her rebirth, she had been so consumed with worry for me that she hadn't spared a thought for them. I won't be returning just yet, she replied firmly. I was actually planning to call them anyway. There are things we need to discuss. As for going home, no, Uncle Mark. Go and rent a house here in town. Once little Ryan is steady, we'll leave the hospital. After cleaning her hands, Elena moved to help me put on my shoes, only to realize there was only one shoe on the floor. I must have been so terrified of her the night before that I had lost one while running. Can I carry you out on my back? Elena asked me gently. And then I'll buy you a new pair of shoes, okay? I shook my head slightly. No need to buy anything. Fine, we won't buy them then. But let me carry you. Ignoring my discomfort, she stubbornly hoisted me onto her back, regardless of the protest written all over my face. Ultimately, she had to buy shoes anyway. The summer heat had turned the concrete ground into a furnace, and I couldn't stand the heat without protection. I want to go home, I whispered, looking at her. But Elena had no intention of letting me go back to that house, not until she had dealt with my uncle. However, instead of a blunt refusal, she looked for a way to stall. I heard the families in your village raise free-range chickens. Could you lead the way and show me? I didn't find the request strange. People from the city often came here to buy mountain chickens, claiming they were tastier and more nutritious. I agreed to lead the way. Elena glanced back at Uncle Mark. The task I gave you, remember it? Uncle Mark nodded, signaling he would get to work immediately. Elena's lips curled into a faint smirk. This silly girl followed closely behind me until we reached a large poultry farm. To keep up her lie, she had no choice but to bite the bullet and buy a hen. The problem was, this particular hen was incredibly haughty. The moment Elena took it from the owner, the bird flapped its wings violently, showering her in feathers. What was more infuriating was how the hen held its head high, arrogantly giving her a painful peck on the hand. Elena winced in pain. If I hadn't been standing right there, she surely would have wrung the chicken's neck. "You've bought your chicken," I said plainly. "I'm going home now." "Wait, you're coming with me." Elena handed the hen to the driver following behind before pulling me toward a small grocery store nearby. She picked out the snacks that looked the tastiest and most expensive, piling them up before handing them to me. As much as I wanted to eat them, I knew I shouldn't just accept things from others, especially someone I had only known for a day. Elena coaxed me. "Just think of this as your payment for being my guide. You earned this. It's the fruit of your labor." I hesitated, staring at the colorful bags of snacks. Throughout my childhood, I had almost never tasted things like these. Living with my uncle, simply surviving was a struggle. I usually watched my classmates eat these treats while I could only swallow my longing. Hearing Elena's reasoning, I finally reached out and took the bag, clutching it tightly to my chest. "Let my driver take you home," she continued. "I'll come find you tomorrow." Elena still had business to handle. Uncle Mark had already called her twice. Curiosity got the better of me. "Why do you want to find me tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, I'll bring you the mango tiramisu you love most," she replied tenderly. "Just wait for me at home." I suddenly remembered that tomorrow was Monday, a school day. Elena asked which school I attended, promising to wait at the gates. "Bunny Primary. There's only one primary school around here. I'm in the 4th grade." As I spoke, I wondered what mango tiramisu even was, having never heard of it. Why did this girl speak as if she knew my favorite flavors better than I did? It felt stranger the more I thought about it. "All right, I'll wait for you at the gate tomorrow morning." Elena gave the driver a few final instructions, pointing to the hen in the car. "When he gets home, stew that chicken into a broth for him to drink." As she watched the car disappear into the distance, Elena pulled out her phone and called Uncle Mark. 20 minutes later, she arrived at an abandoned warehouse. Her expression was calm, almost detached, as she walked inside to find 5 or 6 men standing there. At the far end stood Uncle Mark. On the ground, kneeling in the dirt, was my Uncle Lee. Elena's aura was overwhelming. She stood over him, slowly and meticulously picking the stray chicken feathers off her clothes one by one. Then, with the calculated poise of a formidable queen, she stepped forward and took a seat in the chair Uncle Mark had prepared. The moment Lee saw Elena, he recognized her instantly. "You again." Elena let out a cold laugh. "It seems I've left a lasting impression on you. I suppose if someone chased you with a knife, you'd remember them for quite a while too." She had to admit, Lee possessed a dark sense of humor. Her eyes grew razor-sharp. "Chasing you with a knife was the mercy version. Do you know why I brought you here today? To rid you of those 2 useless hands of yours." Her tone and expression held no trace of a joke. Seeing a young girl radiate such chilling detachment terrified Lee. His body began to tremble. Desperate to save his own skin, he immediately tried to sell out the boy. "What do you want? Just say it. Is it the brat? Do you like that boy, Ryan?" Initially, Elena's anger hadn't reached its peak, but hearing Lee treat me like a piece of property to be bartered away made her blood boil instantly. She stood up and delivered a powerful kick squarely to Lee's chest. Elena had trained in Taekwondo and Sanda for years. While her strength wasn't what it was in her previous life, it was enough to send Lee collapsing to the ground with a pathetic wail of pain. "You think you're worthy of giving him to me?" she spat. She gave a slight wave of her hand to the men standing nearby. "Beat him until he's hovering between life and death, but don't actually kill him. Beat him until the next time he sees little Ryan, he's terrified enough to take the long way around. And if he won't take the long way, then just take his legs. It'll be more convenient for everyone." Without another word, Elena turned and walked out of the warehouse. The place was too filthy. Staying there gave her a headache. Besides, she needed to make time to buy food and supplies to bring to him tomorrow. Back at the hotel, she immediately called her father. Drake Liu answered, his voice booming. "Your mother and I are coming home this afternoon. Uncle Mark says you went to the countryside to find some boy. What is this all about?" "He's your future son-in-law," Elena replied flatly. "I came here specifically for him, and I'm calling because I need your help with something." Her father burst into laughter. on the other end. What does a little girl like you know about such things? You're barely old enough to tie your shoes, and you're already chasing a husband into the mountains?
Come home right now.
Tomorrow is Children's Day. Your mother bought you a limited edition Barbie. High-tech, top of the line. Don't you want to see it? Drake Lou knew his daughter's tastes, or so he thought, and tried to lure her back with toys. If Elena were truly a 10-year-old, the offer would have been irresistible. But she was a woman in her late 20s trapped in a child's body. To her, that doll wasn't worth half a strand of Ryan's hair. I'm not coming back yet. I need you to handle my school transfer papers. Elena had already calculated her move. Expecting me to just follow her back to South City now was a fantasy. I had no one to rely on, but that didn't mean I'd easily follow a stranger. She decided on a slow burn strategy. Build a bond with Ryan first, then bring him home when the time was right. What did you say? Where are you transferring to? Drake Lou shouted. Bunny Primary. It's the only school in town. Hurry up with the paperwork, Dad. Pursuing a husband cannot be delayed. Drake Lou's face turned blue with rage. You and your strange games. You won't study at an elite academy in the city, but you want to go to some godforsaken village to experience life? With your pampered constitution, you won't last a day. The answer is no. Just do it, Dad. Consider it a favor. I'm begging you. Begging won't help. It's Children's Day and you're talking about chasing husbands? Aren't you embarrassed? We're picking you up tomorrow. Dad, I'm serious. So what if I'm young? Didn't you chase Mom around in tattered pants when you were a kid? That was different. Your mother and I were childhood sweethearts. And what's the difference here? If you let me stay, little Ryan and I will be childhood sweethearts too. Drake Lou found himself completely speechless, unable to find a retort. He knew his daughter was strong-willed, independent, and brilliantly sharp, but he never expected her to demand a school transfer over a boy. However, he understood her temperament. The more he resisted, the harder she would push. After a long discussion with his wife, they finally compromised. The next day, Elena arrived at the gates of Bunny Primary School exactly as promised. She got there early, waiting over half an hour before she spotted me in the distance, hurrying toward the school. The sight triggered a flood of memories from her past life. Back then, it was the same. She would wake up early every day and wait at the school gates just to hand Ryan his breakfast. Elena waved her hand, calling out, "Little Ryan, over here." I froze for a moment before trotting over to her. "Eat breakfast first," she said, pulling out a small tiramisu and handing it to me, followed by a cup of warm milk. I hesitated briefly, but eventually, I couldn't resist my growling stomach and began to eat slowly. Elena watched me with a look of pure, quiet contentment. The transfer paperwork was completed in record time. To ensure his precious daughter's comfort in the small town, Drake Lou purchased the best house available and invested a massive sum to build a villa for her as quickly as possible. He also hired several reliable domestic helpers. Thus, despite the move, Elena continued her life of luxury, just in a different location. Elena successfully enrolled in the 4th grade at Bunny Primary. Not only was she in my class, but she also became my desk mate. When I finished copying the teacher's notes from the blackboard and turned my head, I saw her sitting beside me, beaming with a bright smile. This had been going on for several days. With her smiling at me like that every day, I started to feel uneasy. "Aren't you going to listen to the lecture?" I asked. Since she arrived, I hadn't seen her listen once, nor had I seen her take notes or even take out her textbooks. In my eyes, Elena was surely a poor student who hated studying. Yet this poor student was incredibly kind to me. She brought me breakfast every morning and bought me countless delicious snacks. Once or twice was fine, but it was happening so often that I started to feel embarrassed. Elena began to craft her genius persona in front of me. "I'm smart," she boasted. "I don't need to listen to the lectures to get a perfect score." I pouted and turned back to focus on the math teacher. "Little Ryan, let's go pick lotus seeds at the pond after school today," she suggested. I shook my head. I have to go home to do my homework and cook dinner. If my uncle comes home and finds that I haven't made food, he'll be furious. Elena felt a pang of disappointment. In her eyes, her little Ryan was always so busy, always weighed down by chores and worry. At this age, he should have been innocent and carefree. She simply wanted to take him out to play more, to let him experience the joy that every child deserves. "Don't you want to go?" she asked. "I have to go home and cook for my uncle," I answered honestly. "He hasn't been home lately, but I don't know if he'll show up today." Elena spoke softly, her voice laced with a hidden certainty. He won't be coming back, you can rest easy. From now on, he'll never have the chance to hurt you again. I froze, unable to grasp the underlying meaning of her words. At school, Elena acted exactly like a pampered, lazy heiress. She didn't study, she didn't do her homework, and she never listened to the lectures. Instead, she spent every waking moment hovering around me. One moment she was offering me fresh fruit, the next she was pulling out a bar of chocolate. The strangest moment came on a sweltering afternoon when she reached into her backpack and pulled out an entire, large watermelon. I stared at her, wide-eyed. As I bit into a slice of the cool fruit, I asked, "Why are you so good to me?" "Because I like you," Elena replied bluntly. She didn't beat around the bush. She said it straight to my face. "I like you." I tilted my head, curious. "Because I'm handsome?" Elena couldn't help but burst into laughter. This kid already knows he's a heartthrob in the making? Unable to resist, she reached out and pinched my cheek, laughing as she said, "You're too adorable." I replied with total seriousness. "Of course. There are lots of girls who like me. You're just one of them." That one sentence made Elena's heart skip a beat. It seemed her competition was more fierce than she had anticipated. Sure enough, during the lunch break after the fourth period, a chubby little girl walked up to us. Holding a skewer of candied hawthorns, she said, "Ryan, this is for you. Come over to my house after school to do homework, okay?" What was this? Right in front of Elena, this little girl dared to try and snatch her husband away? This was unforgivable. Miss Liu had never suffered such an insult. She spoke coldly. "Kid, go back to wherever you came from and stay out of our way. Ryan doesn't eat candied hawthorns. If he wants them, I'll buy them myself. He doesn't need you trying to get on his good side." Even as she said it, Elena felt a bit ridiculous. She never imagined that one day she would be caught up in a jealous rivalry with a 10-year-old girl. It was absurd beyond imagination. The little girl didn't back down. She looked at Elena with eyes that were both innocent and stubborn. "I'm giving this to Ryan," she shot back. "It's his business. What does it have to do with you?" "His business has always been my business. It's me now, and it'll be me in the future. Do you hear me? Now, get lost." Fortunately, I wasn't all that interested in the candied hawthorns anyway. Compared to that, I much preferred the chocolate Elena bought for me. Elena glared at the chubby little girl for another beat before grabbing my hand and pulling me out of the classroom. Uncle Mark was already there to pick us up for lunch. Back at her place, after we had washed up and sat down to eat, Elena's mind was still racing. She felt she had to take preemptive measures. She couldn't allow anyone else the chance to get close to her future husband. Protecting him had to be put on the schedule immediately. She looked at me, her expression soft but deadly serious. "Little Ryan, from now on, you aren't allowed to accept anything from anyone else. Do you understand? It doesn't matter how delicious it looks, you don't touch it." She leaned in closer. "If you want something to eat, just tell me. I'll buy it for you." How could she let other little girls get a foot in the door? She decided to start brainwashing me right then and there. She wanted me to understand that the girl in front of me was the most reliable, wonderful person in the world, the only one worthy of my lifelong devotion. "People who give you treats always have an ulterior motive," she explained, her voice honeyed but firm. "They want to use you, to trick you. Only I am unconditionally good to you. I'm the only one in this world who will truly treat you best without wanting anything in return." I was a bit confused by her intensity, but eventually, I just nodded. "Okay, I'll remember." Elena beamed with satisfaction. "Hurry up and finish your lunch. I'll take you to get candied hawthorns. You see? Anything you want, I can provide. You don't need anyone else." In that moment, Elena truly understood why the adults in her past life always praised her for being exceptionally bright. With this kind of wit, her future husband would surely fall right into her lap in the years to come. After lunch, true to her word, she bought me the candied hawthorns and even stopped by a small corner store to get me an ice cream. Even though the snacks in this village were nothing special, the ice cream being the most basic kind, I ate it with pure, simple joy. "Little Ryan, do you know?" she said as we walked. "Back in my city, there's an ice cream called Haagen-Dazs. It's so much better than this. Do you want to try it?" Without thinking twice, I spoke my heart. "I do." "Then you'll have to follow me back to South City," Elena said, slowly and methodically laying out her trap. She planned to use my stomach to lure me back to the city. In her previous life, she had discovered that I was a total foodie at heart. Beyond studying, I had no real hobbies other than eating well. Back then, she used to send people to buy every delicacy imaginable for me, from local favorites to high-end imports. It was happening again. Initially, I had maintained a cautious wall between us, but under the constant barrage of gourmet treats she had provided lately, my defenses were crumbling. I was slowly lowering my guard, and the distance between us was vanishing. Elena understood this all too well. She knew she could never allow anyone else to lure me away with delicious food. Someone as pure and simple as me was far too easy for others to develop feelings for. South City is so far away, I said quietly. And I don't know anyone there. You know me, Elena replied instantly. How can you say you don't know anyone? I looked at her, unconvinced. But if I only know you, what happens if you aren't good to me? Or, what if someone else bullies me? Elena made a solemn vow. How could I ever be anything but good to you? From this day forward, I will absolutely never let anyone lay a finger on you. I shook my head. I'm not going. I don't want to leave this place. After speaking, I went back to silently eating my candied hawthorns, falling into a quiet gloom. Watching me, Elena noticed the sadness clouding my face. Perhaps I was thinking of something painful.
Fine, she conceded.
We won't go back to South City for now. But you must remember, do not eat anything anyone else gives you. You only eat what Sister Elena provides. She felt no shame in calling herself my sister. In her previous life, she had never had the chance to hear me call her that. This time, she was determined to make it happen as soon as possible. I don't just take food from anyone, I mumbled. Before you came, other people offered me things too, and I didn't take them. Elena felt a surge of pride. Then why did you refuse them, but accept things from me? I gave her a bright, wide smile. Because you're beautiful. Elena was left speechless, caught between a laugh and a cry. It seemed that even as a child, her little Ryan was quite the connoisseur with an eye for beauty. Her plans were set, but by the next day's lesson, I was already leaning forward to chat with the chubby girl in the seat ahead of us. They were whispering back and forth, and when Elena leaned in to eavesdrop, she found us talking and laughing happily. The sight didn't please her at all. She stepped in, physically wedging herself between us to break up the conversation. The little girl immediately flared up in anger. What are you doing? Elena pulled me behind her and commanded coldly, Little Ryan, come here. She intended to give the girl a piece of her mind, but looking at the small, fragile child before her, a wave of discomfort washed over her. No matter how she looked at it, she felt like a giant bully picking on a toddler. It was pathetic. She took a step back mentally, reflecting on how strange she was being. I have the mind of a woman in her late 20s, she thought, and yet here I am, constantly bickering and competing with a bunch of 10-year-olds. It was truly pathetic. Elena pointed firmly at the desk and barked a single command. Sit down. The little girl was so startled that she visibly trembled, her eyes filling with terror, before she obediently scurried back to her own seat. Elena pulled me back to my chair, settled me down, and launched into her brainwashing routine once more. She was like a giant jar of spilled vinegar, sour and prickly with jealousy. What was so funny that you had to talk to her? She demanded. I was just asking her a math problem, I replied in a small voice. Elena was not pleased at all. She sat beside me every single day, yet I had bypassed her to ask someone else. What kind of logic was that? It was a direct blow to her pride. Am I dead to you? She snapped. Why didn't you ask me? I looked at her with a mix of confusion, doubt, and a hint of disdain. You don't even listen to the lectures. You can't even do simple calculations. Why would I ask you? I spoke with total sincerity. One look at my face was enough to know I meant every word. Elena nearly choked on a laugh. Here she was, a star graduate from the prestigious University of EO, being looked down upon by a fourth grader who thought she was too stupid to solve a math problem. Her life had truly become a comedy of errors. Regret began to sink in. She realized she shouldn't have played the part of the bad student so convincingly. During school years, everyone admired the top students, and surely her little Ryan was no exception. He likely admired intelligence. The best course of action now was to rebuild her image as a scholar genius in his heart. Elena let out a confident, prideful smile.
Who says I don't know?
There isn't a problem in this world I can't solve. Give me that workbook. I'll explain it to you. I didn't expect much, but I handed her my math book anyway. It was an advanced logic problem designed to stretch a student's thinking. Challenging for a 10-year-old, perhaps, but it was child's play for a woman with her education. Elena patiently walked me through every step of the solution. I found myself nodding along, completely absorbed. By the time she finished, my face was filled with pure, unadulterated admiration. That single look of wonder was enough to keep Elena buzzing with excitement for the rest of the night. However, her joy was short-lived. The very next morning, as she walked through the school gates, she caught sight of me walking and talking with that same little girl again. Elena couldn't take it anymore. That girl was testing her boundaries, laughing and chatting with her little husband, as if she were openly trespassing on forbidden territory. Though she was fuming, Elena was a woman of vision. She didn't want to ruin the good impression she had just built with me, so she decided to handle the problem at its source. The little girl. That afternoon, while I wasn't paying attention, Elena cornered the little girl on her way home. She narrowed her eyes and beckoned her over with the swagger of a bully who refused to listen to reason.
You.
Over here. The girl looked at Elena, who stood a full head taller than her, and her legs began to shake. Even though she was only 10, Elena remained polite, adhering to her own set of principles. What are you scared of? I'm not going to hit you. What do you want? The girl asked tremulously. Elena produced a Barbie doll she had instructed Uncle Mark to buy from the town center. When she saw the girl's eyes light up, Elena knew she had won. The girl couldn't believe her eyes. Is this really for me? It is, Elena replied. But on one condition. The girl hugged the doll tightly to her chest, her face beaming with joy. What condition? Elena declared grandly. From now on, you aren't allowed to play with little Ryan anymore. Do you understand? My Ryan is a diligent student who is going to the best university in the country. He can't just be friends with anyone. From this moment on, don't speak to him. If you agree, the doll is yours. As she spoke, Elena felt a twinge of discomfort. She felt like those villainous mothers in soap operas who used money to tear the protagonists apart. But she pushed the feeling aside. The mere thought of Ryan being happy with that girl was more than she could stomach. The girl sprinted away with such excitement that Elena thought she might actually take flight. Watching her disappear into the distance, Elena felt a surge of power. When she returned to the classroom, she found me sitting alone, focused on my homework. Now that the external threat was neutralized, it was time to handle the internal situation. Elena sat beside me and launched a new wave of persuasion. She chattered about various things before suddenly asking, "Little Ryan, are you doing your homework?" I nodded, my pen never stopping. "I suppose you were chatting with little Lily again today?" Elena probed. Little Lily was the chubby girl I had been talking to. "We were discussing the math assignment the teacher gave us yesterday," I replied. Elena fell silent for a moment, a smirk playing on her lips as she began to calculate her next move. "Little Ryan, look at little Lily. She's like a tiny monkey, nothing special. Now, look at me. I'm tall, I'm beautiful. Isn't that much better?" "Don't say things like that," I said bashfully. "I don't want to hear it." But Elena wouldn't stop. She grew bolder, laying her intentions bare. "I'm not kidding, little Ryan. When you grow up, will you be my husband?" My face turned bright red. I shook my head vigorously. "Elena, stop it." Even though I was young, I knew what the word husband meant, and I had no idea how to react to such a bold statement. Elena pushed further. "Little Ryan, I just want you to grow up quickly. When you're older, I can hold you, I can kiss you, and I can even cuddle you while we sleep." She was becoming more and more outrageous. I couldn't sit still any longer. Suddenly, I bolted upright, pointed a trembling finger at her, and cried out, "Teacher, Elena is bullying me." My face was a mask of grievance, my eyes rimmed with red, as I stood there accusing her. Mr. Marcus was our homeroom teacher for class 401. Since I was the top student in the class, I was his personal favorite. The moment he saw me distressed by Elena, his temper flared. He marched down from the podium, took Elena by the ear, and forced her to stand up. "Elena, what is the meaning of this?" Elena, the heiress of the mighty Lou group, being pulled by the ear by a schoolteacher in his 20s, it was an utter humiliation. She stammered, trying to find an explanation but coming up empty. "My office." Right after class, Mr. Marcus barked. He then turned to me, his voice softening instantly. "Don't cry anymore, Ryan. I'll take care of this." Elena sighed, helplessly smoothing back her hair. She realized she had stepped into a massive trap of her own making. 5 minutes later, the bell rang, and the three of us headed to the faculty office. Mr. Marcus sat behind his desk with a stern expression. All right, speak up. Why were you bullying little Ryan? I really wasn't bullying him, Elena explained desperately. Seeing my teary eyes, she felt a wave of self-reproach and heartache. She reached out, intending to pull me into a comforting embrace, but Mr. Marcus caught her hand midair and pulled it away. Ryan, tell me, the teacher urged. What did Elena do to you? Don't be afraid. I'm right here. Mr. Marcus knew my personality well. I was a quiet, obedient boy who had grown shy and withdrawn without parents to lean on. He always looked out for me. I hesitated, but finally, the words tumbled out. Teacher, she said she wants me to be her husband. She said she wants to kiss me. Even though I was small, I knew those weren't respectful words. Elena had talked about hugging and kissing me, and just hearing it made me flush with embarrassment. The moment I finished speaking, Mr. Marcus's face turned a shade of thunderous black. Elena, he roared. Did you actually say those things? Elena bowed her head, unable to meet his gaze. I did say it, but teacher, don't misunderstand. There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Marcus interrupted. Even if it's a joke, those are not things children say. Friends do not joke like that. Elena tried one last time. You really are misunderstanding, teacher. I wasn't joking. Mr. Marcus was so incensed he was momentarily speechless. Elena, you don't study, you don't do your homework, and you don't listen in class. All you do is harass your classmates. Let me tell you something. If you've transferred into this class, you need to leave those bad habits from the city behind. No matter how powerful your family background is, I will still discipline you, Mr. Marcus declared. Elena finally surrendered, muttering, Fine, I understand. Teacher, I'll change. I won't say those things anymore. Mr. Marcus didn't actually intend to be too harsh with her. After all, she was still a child. He figured it might have just been an inappropriate joke. Elena turned to look at me and saw me hanging my head, looking just as aggrieved as I had in the past. A wave of déjà vu washed over her. She remembered a time back in university when she had upset me. Back then, my eyes had turned red with frustration, and she had reached out to wipe my tears, whispering, Don't be mad anymore, baby. Whenever she called me baby, I couldn't help but feel a mix of embarrassment and a strange, flickering warmth. Elena had truly earned herself a thorough scolding from the homeroom teacher. When Uncle Mark received the call, he had to pat his head a dozen times just to confirm he hadn't misheard. Elena was actually harassing a boy at school? Now that the teacher required a parental visit, Uncle Mark awkwardly entered the office. He found Elena standing there, completely unfazed, looking like a dead pig that doesn't fear boiling water. Teacher, what has our young lady done? Uncle Mark asked. Mr. Marcus replied, She's been harassing a classmate and shows no remorse. She's too young to be neglecting her studies like this. We need the parents to cooperate. Why aren't her father or mother here? I've already informed them, Uncle Mark replied. In fact, the principal should be receiving a call from our house right about now. Mr. Marcus was stunned. Such a small matter had reached the principal's ears? He only wanted to teach her a lesson, not turn it into a major scandal that might lead to official disciplinary action. He knew Elena wasn't inherently bad. She was just a pampered heiress. If she were guided now, there was still time to correct her path. Upon returning to the classroom, Mr. Marcus ordered Elena to pack her things and move to the very last row. He was not going to let her sit next to me anymore. Please don't change my seat, teacher, Elena pleaded. I have to sit with little Ryan. It helps me improve my grades. Mr. Marcus remained unmoved. Your grades aren't going to improve that quickly. Move to the back. If you cause more trouble, I'll put a desk right next to mine and have you sit there alone. Seeing that I was still angry and refusing to speak to her, Elena had no choice but to retreat. In one fell swoop, the proud heiress was demoted from the golden front row to the back of the class, right next to the trash can. Elena sat there, sighing in dejection. She stared intensely at the back of my head from across the room. She felt as though, with her small hands, she could reach out and pull me into her world again. She grew increasingly anxious and flustered, unable to figure out how to bridge the gap between us. Yet, she didn't truly reflect on her own behavior. Even after all this, she hadn't let go of her bad habits, which only made her situation more awkward. For the past few days, the thing causing Elena the most distress wasn't being banished to the back row near the trash can, but rather my coldness and avoidance. Ever since her joke, I had stopped initiating conversation, no matter how hard she tried to approach me. Every gift she offered, from cakes and chocolates to expensive toys, I firmly refused. This left Elena utterly bewildered, struggling to reclaim my attention. She began to feel as though she were raising a son rather than courting a partner. In her mind, the image of a long-suffering mother formed, one who constantly endured hardships just to find a way to make her child smile again. Desperate to soften my heart, she hit upon a new idea, a pet. She asked Uncle Mark to find a lop-eared rabbit, hoping its cuteness would melt my resolve. Uncle Mark, ever the confused bystander, couldn't help but wonder if he was supposed to dress up or even put makeup on the rabbit to satisfy his mistress's whims. Day after day, Elena realized that effort and lavish care weren't always received the way she hoped. However, instead of falling into despair, she began to reflect. She understood now that love couldn't be built on outward flashiness or expensive gifts. It required sincerity and respect. One afternoon, as we stood together in the quiet schoolyard, the peaceful atmosphere finally allowed my anxieties to fade. She looked at me, and for the first time, her gaze was devoid of pressure or calculation. It was filled with an undeniable honesty. She offered a gentle smile and said, "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable before. I truly just want you to be happy, but I went about it the wrong way." Her words caught me off guard. I hadn't expected such vulnerability from the usually dominant Elena. Deep down, I realized that love isn't perfect from the start. What matters is the effort to grow together. I smiled back. "I'm sorry too. We both made mistakes. I realized that I don't just need someone to take care of me. I need respect and the space for both of us to grow up." We stood there in a comfortable silence, the air finally cleared of hidden agendas. Those small wounds remained in my heart. Looking into her eyes, I could feel the sincerity she had worked so hard to prove. It was then I understood that while love may be flawed, if both people are patient and willing to learn from their errors, it becomes something beautiful. From that day on, our bond transformed. We weren't just classmates. We became true companions, ready to support and care for one another through both joy and hardship. The future remained uncertain, but we had finally learned how to cherish each other properly. Our love began to bloom, rooted in honesty, forgiveness, and the shared journey of growing up side by side.